WNST, Dawson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively into the crab cake season. It is summertime here. The Orioles providing a little bit of magic in an all-star game appearance for Jorge Lopez next week. We're going to be providing some Maryland Lottery scratch-off tickets. I got some Show Me $10,000 tickets. We're giving these away throughout the month of August. I'm putting the whole schedule together. We're doing 31 crab cakes in 31 days. Also brought to you by our friends at Window Nation. I've got, I know the Orioles gave away their bucket hat, as Chloe, our summer intern, calls it. I've got a bucket hat from Window Nation that I'm going to be wearing out and about, as well as our friends at Goodwill. If you're doing some summer cleaning, they do that, but they also want to make you aware of the jobs programs and the other good things that they're doing throughout the community. And our friends at the Restaurant Association of Maryland. Restaurant Week coming up, second and third week of September. I think we're calling that Broncos weekend around here. Luke Jones joins us now. It is football season soon. It's football season every day if you're on Twitter, right? I mean, every day there's something going on with, I don't know, the commissioner, Daniel Snyder. The Ravens have had a tragic death in their family that I don't know that we've even begun the process, what that's going to look like in a couple of weeks. And then Lamar Jackson's having some fun. Yeah, Eric Koss got nothing to do on a Saturday, but see people out on Twitter. I Need Money, which is obviously a movie reference for all you pop culturists out there. But certainly it's silly, right? I mean, a little bit like, go get paid or don't get paid, do whatever you're going to do. But the wrangling has now made it that Luke Jones and I must discuss Lamar Jackson during All-Star Game Week when Orioles Magic is back for the first time since Sergio Robles.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a total nothing. I think this is, it's a reference from the movie How High, Method Man and Redman from, 20 years ago probably now, which makes me feel old. But you know what this reminded me of? And I know he talked to USA Today at his event over the weekend down in South Florida for the kids. I mean, saw some social media videos with that. I mean, looked awesome, him throwing the kids, and just looked like a great time. And good on him for doing something like that for his South Florida community. But it reminded me a little bit of an Ed Reed kind of move. I think back to Ed Reed 10 years ago. I guess this was going into his last season. And I remember it was that summer I believe he had skipped mandatory minicamp. I mean, Ed was under contract and talking about retirement, but also wanting a new deal at the same time. I mean, in the same way that, that unique way that Ed always talked out of both sides of his mouth. But I remember a tweet that he had that it said, "Tell the bosses I'm comfortable." And it was a photo of him mowing the yard or something like that. And it was just something that you just kind of laughed about. And I know Lamar dismissed this having anything to do with his contract. I think it probably was a little bit of a subliminal message, but it was fun.
Yeah, like the 2 weeks that he didn't practice, that had nothing to do with the contract either, right?
Well, but right? To me, we could have a discussion about OTAs. I don't care about what he posts on his, as long as he's not unfollowing the team in the way Kyler Murray did earlier this offseason, or talking about being traded, or talking about holding out. It's his social media, and if you follow Lamar on social media, it's not deep. It's lighthearted for the most part, and it's him having fun. And I don't care about this. So if you're going to try to,
no, but I guess we do care about if he's showing up 2 weeks from now. Is he showing up?
Well, and that was
that's
the most
literally
notable
all.
thing.
It literally goes back to the journalist.
Sure.
Okay, I'm not caught up in any of that circus, and when I get accused of it, it's even more like, dude, I've been doing this 30 years. Like, I got out of that racket of taking phone calls from maniacs. Like, that's not what I do. I want no part of that. I had Squeegee Boy thing this weekend. The minute you take a side on the squeegee, like, it's social media is that way, and Lamar knows that, and he's out in it, and he knows what it implies, to your point. And to all of our point, we're all wondering, is he going to play for $23 million this year, or happily and well, or is he not? And I don't know the answer to that. And he didn't give us a straight answer to that. Really, he didn't.
Well, and the interview over the weekend with USA Today, he was asked if he's going to hold out at training camp, a follow-up to what you alluded to during mandatory minicamp. And his quote was, "I don't have that on my mind." I said at the time when he kind of gave the "I don't know" response that, for me, it kind of felt like it was almost a reflex more than anything else. If you're asking my personal opinion in terms of whether he's going to show up or not, because why would he show up at mandatory minicamp and not show up at training camp then? He showed up for the mandatory portion of the spring program. The rest of it was voluntary, as we talked about. Whether a quarterback should or should not be there, that's up to anyone's personal opinion. We've talked about the fact that quarterbacks, generally speaking, and short of talking about Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers in this current NFL landscape, quarterbacks are generally there for OTAs. So, but he was there for mandatory minicamp. So if he was there for mandatory minicamp, why wouldn't he be there for the start of training camp? That's my opinion. I haven't heard that from Lamar himself. I haven't heard that from anyone within the organization, but that's been my expectation. And it's why, even though he had a chance to completely say, I'll be there for training camp, I'm not holding out, I'm not going to sit out
There's
the start of the
unnecessary
season.
drama with this kid. There really is. I mean, like to some degree, the fact that we're here talking about it, if he was just on vacation and didn't put that thing up, I don't know that we'd be even discussing this right now.
Yeah, we would. I mean, come on, man. Yeah, we would. We've talked about Lamar's contract for over a year. This is the latest little morsel nugget of information or non-information or disinformation or whatever you want to call it.
There's no doubt that they're talking, right? That there's been a conversation now, whether there's a deal struck or not.
Well, and that for me is what was notable and relevant from mandatory minicamp week. From the moment Lamar showed up, he had a solid mandatory minicamp. He was in shape. He got positive reviews from teammates and coaches. For me, the OTA stuff, as I said all along, I never thought it was the end all be all, this critical crisis type of a development, but it was a symptom, a reflection of the fact that he doesn't have a long-term contract. And you see guys do this quite often, that they're not at OTAs if they're looking for a long-term deal. But I'd also like to think
if I gave him $50 million a year guaranteed, he would be there this time next year, right?
Yeah, sure. I think that would be an expectation. And yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I mean, I thought all along, even though he said it wasn't about his contract, I think it's always about your contract to a degree. And that doesn't mean it's all about that, but it's important. And he knows that. And he was asked about it over the weekend at his event, the USA Today article that I'm sure people have checked out by now. But he talked about the fact that he's hopeful they'll get a new deal done before training camp, which is a little bit different than what we had heard over the last calendar year, and people speculating about him wanting to play on the franchise tag and go the Kirk Cousins route and betting on himself and all that. So, the fact that they had at least some dialogue during mandatory minicamp, to me, that was the most relevant development of that week. We can talk about what Lamar said, didn't say. We know he's not, the most polished in terms of talking to the media, which is fine. He doesn't need to be that when you're an MVP quarterback and you're making Pro Bowls and leading your team to the playoffs. So, it comes down to, will there be a deal before the season starts? We don't know. They've had some talk. I'm guessing because quarterbacks do report earlier than the rest of the veterans for training camp later this month, there'll be an opportunity to have some more dialogue, and we'll see if something gets done. But I will also say Joe Flacco went into a contract year in 2012, and that turned out pretty well for him and turned out well for the Ravens. So, beyond the OTA piece of this, which we've talked about at this point, you have your opinions about it. I have my opinions about it. Listeners right now have their opinions about it. And I think at this point, you're not changing anyone's mind. We all have various thoughts on that. But if he's, he was there for minicamp, if he's there for training camp, if he plays out the season, whether they have a long-term deal or not, we'll see how it plays out. And I mean, the Ravens want to get something done, but they want to get it done on their terms, right? Lamar Jackson, we assume, and he has said, wants to get something done. He wants to get it done on his terms, whatever they might be. So whether there is a fit for that right now or 3 weeks from now or in early September, or we're talking about the franchise tag, 6 months from now. And we'll see how it plays out. But again, going back to the reference from How High and the movie on Twitter and Instagram, that to me was, it was whatever. It's fine, and I didn't read too much into that. Although I'm sure, despite what Lamar said, probably at least a little bit of a subliminal message there, and that's fine. I don't mind that nearly as much as going the route of some of these guys who, it almost reminds me of being back in high school and blocking someone on AOL Instant Messenger where you're unfollowing a team and taking off all references and all that we've seen. Even Marquise Brown did earlier this offseason. So, if
that is the method of the young man here in the modern era, is to speak through social media. And, it says to me as a fan, I wonder if he's going to show up for work. You know what I mean? I've employed people.
Maybe
signs like that. I'd say maybe they're not coming to work. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe the Ravens know for sure. And maybe they go to bed at night knowing that he's going to come and play on September 11th for them, right? At the current rate, that there's not going to be the proverbial, I'm going to walk off. I'm not going to play for that. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Lamar to not play for that. I do. I think there's a lot of internal pressure of, don't go play for 23. You're MVP. Don't get your money, get paid. You got hurt last year. Don't get hurt again. Get paid. And I don't know. That's a great philosophy, to your point. Then there's the part where Steve Bisciotti says, I'm not giving a quarterback $230 million of guaranteed money. I'm not doing it. I'm not one that runs in the linebackers. No, I will go north of Mahomes, but that's where we're, and like that, and that's where we're going to go. And if he doesn't want to play, we're going to have a rough season. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where the balance in that would be, because there is no splitting the middle. And this idiocy in Cleveland has completely, I don't know if everybody in the fan base really understands it, because I've been following this professionally for 27 years. It was kind of an outlandish contract for those who don't follow every nickel and salary cap, crunchers and all of that it really has changed everything, changed the whole dynamic of what Lamar could or should be doing with or without an agent, and the unorthodox nature of doing it without an agent. And to your point, what the fans get out of it when someone like me just asked a straight question, hey dude, what are you doing, that you don't get a straight answer, and his best buddy is out on social media deleting everyone. You know what I mean? Like, I can't get into the kid's head. You know what I mean? I don't know where he is, but I would think, I'd be shocked if Steve Bisciotti gives $232 million guaranteed to him. I just would be shocked if they go above and beyond what Cleveland did, other than hold the line and saying that's not a real deal. We're gonna work from the parameters of sanity. And if you can't work in the parameters of that, then I guess you're not coming to work. That's really where this is. Do you want to work for $23 million or do you not? Yeah. And that's where fans are going to see it if he doesn't come, right? And I guess you'd say, well, he's just going to come. I don't know if he was just going to come. I think he'd be louder about, like, tell everybody else, see him in Baltimore on the 27th. I'm coming. We're going to come win a championship. And then, he could say that too.
But I would also say, didn't he speak plenty when he showed up for mandatory minicamp to dismiss that possibility? I don't know. I'm throwing out opposite sides of it. But to go back to what you said about Steve Bisciotti, that's the same conversation every owner is having with his general manager right now. Whether you're talking about, maybe Kyler Murray's not the best example, but certainly Joe Burrow, certainly Justin Herbert. Talking about guys who are already have accomplished, put up some impressive credentials, where they're saying, hey, we can be kicking and screaming all we want about saying we're not going to give a quarterback this, but you know what that means? You need to be prepared for the possibility that you could lose that guy then, because that's just the reality. It takes one team to say, yeah, I'll do better than the Watson deal, and everything changes then. And the one thing I will say, Nestor, and this is certainly going to come across as more of a pro player perspective. Why is it insanity if players in basketball and baseball can get guaranteed money? Why can't football players get guaranteed money? I'm just saying, especially quarterbacks, knowing how important they really are. If you look at the absolute value of a quarterback relative to every other position on the field, you can make an argument that quarterbacks are still underpaid relative to what the entire salary cap is. So from that perspective, I'll push back a little bit on what you said as far as insanity. Now, it might be it is insanity to give that contract to a quarterback with the off-field problems and full-blown crisis that the Browns invited into their organization by
And by the way,
acquiring
the
this kid.
Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans were willing to. So
Sure, no
a
question.
good
Well,
chunky 10, 12% of the league, all in desperate need of quarterback. I mean, Atlanta had Matt Ryan. You know what I mean? Like they had a quarterback. So
old one, but yes.
okay,
Sure.
but they took this on. You're saying Lamar hits the street. Who doesn't want Lamar, right? Seattle
Sure.
Seahawks be running, here's money and like it'd be all that, right?
Right. And to your point, these teams now, these other teams weren't willing to do 230 million guaranteed, but the fact that they were willing to go into business, get into bed with Deshaun Watson, despite all of his problems, despite everything that's known and what potentially isn't known that could come out at some point in time, and not knowing what the suspension's going to be and how long he's going to be unavailable. If they were willing to take part in that, then to me, the next logical step is they would say, yeah, we'll give, if Lamar Jackson becomes available in a couple of years, or if Justin Herbert becomes available in a couple of years, or Joe Burrow becomes available in a couple of years, yeah, I'll give that guy 250 million guaranteed because my organization is completely sunk and screwed without a quarterback. And if I get a guy like that, we've got a chance to win a Super Bowl every year. So again, the shift, it's why I've said all along, and I'm not alone in saying this, but my belief is the Watson deal is a sea change because one, just because of the guaranteed money, and we saw the Kirk Cousins situation play out. We saw Dak Prescott do that to a certain degree, even though the deal he ultimately signed was a shorter term deal, but not fully guaranteed. But the next logical step is quarterbacks flat out saying, I want fully guaranteed, or I'm going to go the route of the franchise.
Well, that's why I'm saying there's a lot of pressure on Lamar here, above and beyond just what he wants or his mom wants or his family wants, or he's in a rare position in the history of the game in a lot of ways, on the backside of being the second guy to the ledge after somebody else, to your point, with all the problems he has, getting this sort of a contract. How do you put the genie back in the bottle? And I think that's something that Bisciotti was trying to figure out that when he was avoiding me down at the Breakers a couple months ago, because that was the week that it was an odious odor around the Haslam folks because of this, because next man up is what? Well, Steve looks to be next man up here, and Lamar looks to be next man up, and TikTok. And have you seen his Twitter lately?
Yeah, right. And let's be very clear. When I say that you have to, I'm not saying that Steve Bisciotti automatically just has to do that. My point is, if you say you don't want to and you say you're not going to, then you have to acknowledge the possibility that you could eventually lose that type of a talent, which you're talking about a generational quarterback talent and a guy who's already very accomplished and a guy who's led them to a lot of wins since he took over halfway through the 2018 season. So, it's all part of it. And clearly we've talked at length ad nauseum and we'll continue to the lack of an agent and how that complicates matters. But at the same time, he's under contract for $23 million this year. The Ravens have the franchise tag, multiple franchise tags at their disposal. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon, at least by his own accord. So that's where the Ravens look at this and say, we'll let it play out, and we'll see what he looks like this season, and we'll see what he looks like next season, and we'll see what our offensive line looks like in the meantime, and we'll see what Rashad Bateman looks like in the meantime, and we'll see what Mike McDonald with a revamped defense looks like in the meantime. So they know that come next year it's going to be a high figure, right? Whether it's a franchise tag or you can sign them to a long-term deal, and if it's fully guaranteed, it's going to be a big number because you're not going to try to push that out too far. But they know that's coming, so you try to plan. If you're Eric DeCosta, plan it out the best you can. While it's certainly you'd rather not have that uncertainty, but as I mentioned, as I alluded to earlier in our conversation, Joe Flacco went into a contract year, and he didn't skip OTAs, but it was very much a case where he went into the season. The Ravens offered a certain amount. He balked at that and said, "No, I'm not signing for that." What was it, $90 million? I think it was, rather than the 120.6.
By the way, he was coming off of putting the Super Bowl pass into the hands of Lee Evans in the
corner. Yeah, sure,
right.
Sure.
So literally did his job, as they would say at that point. And I don't remember anybody thinking he wasn't going to play. Like, I
Right.
don't remember sitting around here thinking Joe's not coming to camp. I mean, Joe felt like he had piss and vinegar and something to prove. I, I guess Lamar. I just think it's a different era, dude. I mean, I just think it's a
It could.
different era. I think this is a different kind of quarterback that runs into linebackers, that doesn't want to risk the body at this point in that way without having like real money. I mean, I don't know how you go into the season when you could have 80, 100, 120 million in the bank and you're playing for $1.5 million a week or whatever the number, however that $1.3 million a week, whatever the number is, right? During the course of the season, 17 games now, so you have to divide it a little differently as the paychecks come in for these guys game by game. But I if he were my kid, I'd say go get your best deal or don't go to camp. I mean, that I would tell him not to come to camp 2 weeks from now. So that's where I am. And then I see this Twitter and, oh, no, all this passive aggressive nonsense. I mean, I agree with you. It is not a very mature negotiation in that way. And it's also not, he doesn't have to shake the cage, to get us all talking about him and then say, why are y'all talking about me? I mean, come on, man. I'm 53 years old. I'm not, this isn't the high school dance for me, right? So I think as fans, you just you're wondering. I think the betting community needs to know, because we're wagering on these things now. If he's going to show up or not show up. I think they think he's going to show up, but I don't know that they know he's going to show up. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, if I were his dad or if I were his agent, I'd say, you missed the last 7, 8 games. They love you a lot. Let's figure out how much they love you. Let's get the best deal we can get and change your life and get you in and play football if this is where you want to be. Now, you want to be a Miami Dolphin? You want to, you don't like Baltimore, you don't like the weather, you don't like the coach, you don't like the owner, you don't like the media, you don't like the small market, it's not big enough for you, maybe you don't like the color purple, I don't know, right? Like, whatever it is that would lead him to not want to be here, that if it really is, I'd rather just go play, and and I don't think Flacco didn't want to be here. Flacco never talked about being anywhere but here ever. He loved
Lamar
it.
hasn't either, by the way. I'm just saying, Lamar hasn't either.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough. I don't know. We're all reading tarot cards here, right? Like, I mean, this is a one big game until it's not anymore. But it is fascinating because if I were him, I'd get a contract before I played. If I wanted to be in Baltimore and I wanted to be paid, if I wanted to be set for life. Now, I'm not cocky in 24 and an MVP and thinking, that I'm unbreakable and unstoppable. And at some point, somebody will love me. To your point, there are other teams out there that would give me X if I go play this year. Either way, and Flacco was pretty clear about that at that point too, saying, unless I really got hurt, somebody was going to give me a lot of money and it would have been okay. I think I would have been a Raider, I would have been something, and I would have been paid, and I already had a lot of money. And Flacco was living in his parents' bedroom for 3 or 4 years. He was a different cat. So Lamar's a different cat. And because of that, this is unique, because I wouldn't go run around out there for 23 million for $1 million a week if I were him. That's all I'm saying. I wouldn't.
Fair enough. And the difference here, Joe Flacco wasn't making $23 million in 2012. I can't remember what the number was off the top of my head, but it wasn't that. So, on the flip side, you say he is making $23 million this year, which is, well, I think 2.5 times more what he made over his first 4 seasons combined, something along those lines. I can't remember exactly. So from that standpoint, you say, I am going to bank $23 million this year. I do love the Ravens. However, if they're not willing to do the Watson deal or something close to that, and they're, in his mind, lowballing, then I'll let it play out. And I can make them be in a position where they have no choice but to give me more, in the same way that Joe Flacco did when he won a Super Bowl. I mean, the Ravens had no choice then to make him the highest paid player in the league, even though Joe was never the best quarterback in the NFL. That the market dictated the Ravens having to do that, or they were going to lose them. So, that's where, if you're Lamar, you say, I'll bank my $23 million. I'll go out there and have another MVP season and lead this team to the Super Bowl, and then they'll have no choice. And if they still balk, then I'll be a year closer to free agency and I'll play on the franchise tag, which will pay me a lot more money. So there are a lot of layers to this. And again, it's so complicated because there's so much unknown because agents talk, right? And agents leak information, and the Ravens typically don't leak information. So it's led to a lot of quiet, a lot of radio silence from the organization, and especially from Lamar, and that's fine. But it's led to a lot of speculation, and yes, us trying to interpret every social media post and
I would always say this. The reason I'm even talking about it, especially in July when the Orioles haven't, lost since, you didn't have a tan, since last month or whatever, is because it is a question as to whether he's going to come. And again, there should be you know what I mean? Like, again, this isn't, I'm not blaming the kid. I like Lamar. Lamar never did anything to me, but whether I give Lamar $250 million, I've questioned that from the minute you and I saw him up on the roof in Canton, Ohio in that Hall of Fame game when he started running the linebackers out on cement. And so there's always been the question as to, but there's no way I think he should go out and play for $1.3 million a week. And in week 4, separate his shoulder, and the Ravens go, oh, I don't know, 7-10, whatever awful thing would be if something happened early in the year, and then he's not going to get $200 million of anything from anybody, and he goes home as a guy that maybe like RG3, right? I mean, would be the
I mean, I still
right?
think
He's earned more money than that, dude. He
I
deserves
agree.
to be paid. I mean,
I
if they're gonna be married, if they want him to be their quarterback, they need to. And this is a pressure on Eric and Steve. I'm not. This isn't me shaming Lamar. It's if y'all want to get married, you better get married now because I don't think it's a good idea for my client. If I'm representing Lamar to be running around out there with all this risk. And I don't. There's insurance. There's all of that too. That if Lamar had an agent, or if he has an agent, or has people who service him well, would be giving him that kind of advice as well, because it's a violent game, bro. You know what I mean? Like, literally, like, it's a little different than baseball and Adley Rutschman starting his clock and whatever. This is different. And given where he was last year and where the team straights go when he gets injured, this is as much pressure on the team as it is on Lamar. And Lamar turning up heat on social media, fair enough, but it does lead me, and I'm not a conspiracy rat on sports radio. I am questioning whether he's going to post up and whether he's really going to be in a uniform September 11th if he's going to be playing under the current deal. I question that because I don't think that's good business for Lamar. In my opinion, I don't think that's good business for him.
But then you're foregoing $23 million. Is that good business either? I'm just saying, right?
You're getting your best deal, whatever your best deal is from Eric DeCosta, and then saying, is that really my best deal, or is my best deal getting an insurance policy and going and running around and hoping that Tony Siragusa's grandchild doesn't fall on me, right? You know what I mean? Like that something bad doesn't happen.
But I would also say, and we've even at the time, it was kind of thought about this way. I mean, think back to the Dak Prescott injury. He was playing on the franchise tag, and everyone was thinking, oh my gosh, it's so grotesque. He came back, got a great deal, had a very good 2021 season. And look, I get it, Dak Prescott and Lamar aren't the same exact style of player. But the point is, while I agree with you, and if I were his agent, I'd be pushing big time. I would have pushed much harder over the last year to get something done instead of him not engaging. And again, why he didn't engage? Was he insulted by some numbers the Ravens talked about early on, and he just said, forget that? I have no idea. Again, we've been trying to speak for him, speak for the Ravens to a degree, because it's so tight-lipped that we're going to speculate. It's our job to talk about this, but
all the public knows is the 8 minutes they hear from Lamar in his Twitter feed, and when somebody catches up to him on a playground throwing footballs around, right? Like literally, or when he shows up on scooters downtown, on Instagram. I mean, like, we don't really know the kid, and philosophically, when we sit and talk to him, we don't learn much philosophically. We really don't in regard to what's on his mind, and it is this coy, dramatic presentation on social media over the weekend, and not showing up to many, voluntary, but 2 weeks of voluntary that 88% of the roster showed up for, and then saying, no, it had nothing to do with contract. I mean, at some point, let's get this out in the open. And it's going to get out in the open. I mean, it is, because he's either going to show up and play or he's not.
it comes. I mean, how many players have we heard say it's not about the money? It's always about the money.
I mean, to Ed
guys
Reed
that you like, guys you
that was a generation ago.
Right, exactly, and that's why I even made the Ed Reed reference to a decade ago. So that's where I look at it, and I don't think it's that. I don't think those social media posts. I don't think it's that deep. Do I think it was a subliminal, alluding to his current situation? Sure.
Well, good. It got us talking about it.
And by the way, it's totally fine that he did that. Again, he didn't curse out the organization. He didn't request a trade. He didn't unfollow them. He didn't scrub Ravens references from his social. I mean, it's fine.
You know what? I need money is exactly what I would say if I were his agent right now.
I was just going to say, we all want money, right? I mean, to some degree, whether it's for yourself, for your family, to business venture, we all want more money, right? I mean, that's where I looked at it and I just kind of chuckled, as I was on the beach and I saw people referencing it. So, but to go back to your point, as far as the big picture, he was asked flat out if he'll hold out of training camp until a deal's reached. And he said, I don't have that on my mind. Now, is that a direct yes or no? No. At the same time, if he doesn't have that on his mind, and based on the fact that he was there for mandatory minicamp, if you ask me my personal opinion to predict, I think he'll be there. And
you think he's going to play for $23 million?
At this point, yeah. And if you're the Ravens, what other choice do you have but to think that right now? Other than just saying, yeah, we'll go give you $240 million guaranteed.
By the way, I wonder when they found out he wasn't coming. I haven't asked anybody because everybody's on vacation, and obviously they had deaths. I mean, they've had all sorts of stuff. I wonder when they found out that he wasn't there at practice. I wonder if he called or tagged.
What you mean during OTAs?
OTAs. Was there any warning that he wasn't coming?
I think the biggest warning would have been the fact that he wasn't there for all. Keep in mind the 3 weeks of OTAs where they open up 1 day per week to media. They have workouts that start in mid-April. It isn't until late May that they get on the field in terms of for the media to see. So there was over a month of voluntary workouts, and they start out just doing lifting and running, and then they get into offense can do work against offense, defense can do work against defense, and then they get into OTAs. So by then they're 5 or 6 weeks into it. By the time they start practicing as a full team, so he wasn't there for any of that. So when you're not showing up for any of that, and let's be clear, there are plenty of veterans who, they're there for a couple days. They're not there for a certain week. I mean, you mentioned 88%.
It's not allowed to say with the union. Are you allowed to say, hey, dude, was there some reason you didn't make it? Or say that.
I mean, they can have dialogue. They can talk, but they know it's voluntary.
If you have optional work on Saturday and Sunday, you can't come to the boss on Monday and the boss can't say, where were you Saturday night, right? Like literally, kind of. So I don't know what that communicate. It felt to me like they were a little shocked. I mean, I'm just saying to some degree, and that it wasn't stated in any way. If I don't have a deal, I'm not coming to all of it is very, very not normal over 3 decades of covering this in the way that, hey, it's a contract thing. I respect that. It's your money, dude. Get your money. Make your papers, right? I'm good with all that. Just say, I've done this. I deserve that. And until I get that, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I think as a sports radio guy, as someone that's negotiated deals for and against in lots of different ways, I respect that. And especially when you're talking about this kind of money and this kind of career and this kind of risk. Again, we keep going back to the risk part of, hey, dude, you didn't play the last 2 months of last year. It's the NFL. It's not for long, and get your money or don't go back out there. And I don't know that I haven't said that a lot over the last 6 months because people think I'm anti-Lamar. As Dennis says, we're pro-Ravens is what we are, right? We need the Ravens to do well. I'm not a fan of the player. I'm a fan of the team. I'm a fan of the organization, the city, the overall good thing. And, but for him, I wouldn't play if I didn't have a deal. I wouldn't.
Well, but that's where I continue to come back to. So, and that's fine. Everything you just said, fully acknowledging that, then why show up for mandatory minicamp? He was there, took part in all of mandatory minicamp, was in shape, looked good. Wasn't the best I've seen him practice. Certainly wasn't the worst I've seen him practice. It was totally fine.
And why hold out the last couple weeks? You know what I mean? What?
Oh, because that was voluntary, and maybe that. If we're going to, and I know he said it wasn't about his contract, but if he was sending a message, that's when you typically see guys send the message. I mean, Kyler Murray didn't show up for OTAs because he's looking for a deal. I mean, we've talked about this with Aaron Rodgers the last few years. I mean, we mentioned Ed Reed a generation ago. So I mean, it kind of is what it is in that regard. But everything we talk about and all the arguments, everything you just laid out in terms of if you were advising him, and plenty of people had said this. I'm not saying that I would tell him, hey, I think it's a great idea to play on your, last year of your 5th-year option of your rookie contract for $23 million. But if, everything you just acknowledged, the risk, that risk was present during mandatory minicamp. So, if you show up then, training, you don't show up at training camp, you're subject to fines, unless he would do, and now that we mention it, at least acknowledge this, that kind of hold in mentality that we've seen some guys exercise where they show up to avoid being fined, but they don't practice. So, do you see something like that? I don't know. But I'll go back to, I continue to think, as far as what my gut tells me, is he'll take part in training camp, and I think they'll have more dialogue trying to get something done. Lamar acknowledged over the weekend that he said hopefully when asked if they'll get a deal done before training camp. So that's more than he was saying a year ago. Think about it. Every time he was asked about his deal, asked about contract talks, last spring, last summer, even early last season, what was his stock response? I'm not focused on that right now. So the fact that he said hopefully, the fact that he said, yeah, we'll see what happens, the fact that they had some conversation during mandatory minicamp week, to me, that's a positive. Does that mean a deal gets done? I don't know. A deal can come together quickly, or it can take months and even years in some cases, as we've seen. Even the Ravens have had some guys that were tagged for multiple years. Chris McAllister, Terrell Suggs, until we finally got a deal. So we'll see how it plays out. But everything about what we're talking about in terms of will he show up, will there be a holdout, I go off of what we saw in the spring, which wasn't there for the voluntary part, but showed up, took part, took every rep. There was nothing to see there in terms of how he proceeded during mandatory minicamp. So no, until we see otherwise, I'm going to assume, and again, that's my opinion right now, I'm sharing, that we'll see him at training camp, and it'll be business as usual as they hopefully try to get a deal done before the season starts, because I'm in agreement with you. I think what would be best for him is to get that long-term security. However, takes two sides for a deal. And if Lamar's opinion is that the Ravens aren't offering him what he deems himself to be worth, then there isn't a deal. And it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen quarterbacks play out a rookie deal here in Baltimore, or potentially go the franchise tag route, as we've seen Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott do in recent years.
He is Luke Jones. He'll be covering the Ravens just like that, even though it's not Ravens season. It's always Ravens season. We're a couple weeks away from training camp beginning later on in the month. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour as part of our tour all August long. It's all brought to you by our friends at Goodwill. I got my Window Nation bucket hat as well, and our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I'll be giving these Show Me Lottery scratch-off tickets, these $10,000. I had a couple of winners at Costas the other day, too. I had some great conversations with Todd Crandall. Also, we learned a little bit about brewing beer with our friends at Key Brewing over there, as well as Marshall Weston from the Restaurant Association of Maryland. They're also sponsoring the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. We're going to be doing Restaurant Week here in September. Everybody knows about that. Did a great segment on where all that came from. Marjorie's also on my team now, talking about that for Baltimore County as well. So we'll be out and about in the community throughout the month of August. But meantime, this week, a lot of political stuff, but we are doing some baseball. Certainly, as Oriole Magic is caught on, Luke will be in and around the ballpark, and they're on the road a little bit, but coming back, and certainly an interesting month here as we await training camp. We have a relevant baseball team in an all-star game next week as well, and no World Cup. But it is Chicken Palooza. Our friends at Royal Farms have all the chicken things going on. I sort of look good in this gold gear. The folks at UMBC and Towson like it. The Steelers fans make fun of me too. But this is a better look. This way better looking than those Steeler gear. I'll tell you that right now. I wouldn't wear that. I'm proudly wearing my Chicken Palooza gear as we heat up for Chicken Palooza and next month Crab Cake Palooza. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We are WNST AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Lamar's contract, and Baltimore positive.